My name is Tayo Oyedeji, and I'm here to talk to you about income generation. Today, we're going to focus primarily on starting a new business because it's one of the proven ways of generating new sources of income so that we can all be successful. I'm the CEO of Overwood. Overwood is a firm that democratizes investments by making safe, high-yield investments accessible to all Africans. With as little as about $100, you can access the same kinds of investments that are open to multi-millionaires. So that's what Overwood does. All right, so let's get into it. Entrepreneurship. A statement accredited to Warren Tracy is probably my favorite way of thinking about entrepreneurship. It's about living a few years of your life in the way that most people want, so that you can spend the rest of your life the way that most people cannot afford to. Think about it. Entrepreneurship is hard. It's about focusing on a couple of problems or one single problem and spending so much time trying to monetize the solution to that problem. And so it's a lot of time, a lot of commitment, a lot of effort. But if you do it right, you'll be able to generate the kinds of income that gives you the kinds of lifestyle that many other people would never be able to do. Another problem when I think about entrepreneurship is that people think that only smart people can build really good businesses, but that's not true. Thomas Edison says that genius, or in this case, let's just make it entrepreneurship, is about 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. The way I like to put it is that the idea is not as important as the execution. So 1% of your entrepreneurial success, to a large extent, in my view, is dependent on the strength of the idea. But 99% of it is dependent on your ability to work hard and execute in a way that brings your ideas to life. And so today we'll focus on three key pillars of entrepreneurial success. It's about self, market, and execution. When you think about self, it's about who are you? What are the things that are important to you and all that stuff? The second one is what does the market want? And then the third execution is about how well can you execute. Now, I like this quote that's attributed to Socrates that says, to know thyself is the beginning of wisdom. A lot of times we think that wisdom is external to us, it's extrinsic to us, it's outside. But really, wisdom is about sitting down and just understanding who you are and what the strength of your personality provides to the world in general. So it's about creating value from inside out, right? So let's try and break this down a little bit so that we can understand how self helps us, or how an understanding of self or knowledge of self helps us be successful in entrepreneurship, right? So it's three key pillars that drive self-knowledge. The first, obviously, is passion. What are you passionate about? What are the things that you wake up in the morning and you feel like doing? What are the skills you have? Because if you feel like doing something but you don't have the skills to do it, then it's tough or impossible to monetize it. And then the final one is your self-image. What do you think about yourself? Norman Vincent Peale says that unless you can see it and believe it, it's impossible to achieve it. So the first question is, how do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as a failure or as a success? Do you believe inside you that you can make it happen, that you can be a successful entrepreneur? And I'll start with the passion part of it because I think most people make mistakes in this regard. The first error that people make is to think that passion is enough. So I'm passionate about this thing, and if I put all of my strength into it, then it's going to be successful. That's not true. The other one is to think that passion is not important. So it's two ways. Passion is not the most important thing, but passion is also important. Because if you're not passionate about a problem that you're trying to solve, then eventually you get burnt out. You get burnt out, and so you won't be able to continue. Let me use myself as an example, right? So in my life, I've started about 6 to 7 companies. A number of them have been successful, but many of them have also not been successful. And the one thing that I've noticed about the businesses that I've started that have not been successful is that each of those businesses have failed primarily because I lost passion. I stopped being interested in them. A lot of those businesses were actually in the media and entertainment industry. So I would start it will be exciting, it will be fun. And then within a couple of months or years, I'll get bored. Because media and entertainment is not suited to my personality. So it's not about, when you think about media and entertainment, it's not really amenable to the laws of science, right? So why do people like Beyonce more than Adele, for instance? Nobody knows why, right? Why is Jay-Z successful as a rapper? When to many people that understand rap, the feeling is that Nas, for instance, is a much better rap artist than Jay-Z in many ways, right? So why is Jay-Z the most successful artist? Now, what I'm always trying to do in my life and in my businesses is to find formulas and procedures and processes that work. And in entertainment, to a large extent, formulas, processes, and procedures don't often work. So when I try a couple of times and it doesn't work, I'm like, who knows? But I have friends. And so one of the things I do is I ship off those businesses and find partners that are passionate about entertainment. And sure enough, I started, put the processes together, find a partner, and the moment I exit, the businesses begin to do well, primarily because the partners that I find are very passionate about entertainment and media, and they make those businesses work and be effective. So who are you? What are you passionate about? On the flip side, I've always been passionate about finance, right? So because finance, to me, is a lot more scientific. You know that if you do ABC, you get XYZ results. If you diversify, you do your math with respect to your investments, you're very focused on the things that have worked in the past, and more importantly, you treat people right. To a large extent, I think you can be successful in finance. So there are formulas that lead to success. So that's why I've always been successful in finance and in every single finance-based business that I've started. So, I mean, who you are, to a large extent, determines how successful you can be with respect to the businesses you start. Right. The second part of it is the market. A lot of times, people start businesses with passion or skills, right? And they say, I'm passionate about this problem, or I have a certain skills that are amenable to this problem, so I think I'm going to be successful. That's not right. The way to start a business is to start from the market. What does the market need and what does the market want? So it says, Zigzaglar says, one can get anything. That is, you can get anything you want if you're willing to help enough people get what they want. So rather than start from what do I want or how do I want to start this business or what am I interested in, start from what do the people want. So when you understand the market, it's a lot easier to build businesses that respond to the needs and wants of the businesses than if you don't. So there are three things you need to understand with respect to the market. What's the market size? How big is the problem that you're trying to solve? Because if it's not a big enough problem, then you can't monetize it. You can't make enough money to make it worth your while. Who are the people that are currently competing in that market? And how easy is it for you to reach the target market or the people that you're trying to produce the goods or service for? So let me give an example across each of these three things so that you can understand how it works to a large extent. What's the size of the market? So I have a friend that is a really, really good choreographer. He's always danced all his life, and that's what he wants to do. Now, the problem with dance is great. I mean, and some people have made a living doing that, especially in the West. So my friend has a bunch of case studies of people in America and Europe that have built dance troupes and have become really, really successful financially doing it, right? His problem, however, is that he's based in Africa. And what that means is that when people are struggling with the basics of life, the arts become less important to them than, say, food or shelter. So people are still at the very bottom of the Maslow's hierarchy of need. They're trying to meet basic needs like food, clothing, and shelter. Art becomes not as important as meeting those needs. So he has not been able to generate a big enough market size for his dance troupe, primarily because a lot of the people that he wants to reach with his wonderful art to a large extent are not able to afford it or pay him enough to monetize. I think it's also important to understand the competition. One of my friends runs a huge farm. It's got about, almost 200 hectares, almost 2,000 hectares of farmland that has gone really, really well for him. And one day he walks up to me and says he wants to start a tech firm. And I said, why do you want to go into tech? You're already doing so well in agriculture. He says he's bored, he wants something else, blah, blah, blah. So I said, okay, sounds good. So what do you want to do? And he says he wants to build a firm to compete against Airbnb. Because whenever he travels, he uses Airbnb, and he thinks that it's not as good as it should be. So I smiled. I said, so what's your budget for promotion? About $100,000. I said, well, Airbnb that's his budget for a year or more. I said, Airbnb spends that much in a day on promotion and advertising. How are you going to compete with that? How do you build a model that effectively competes with that? I talked to him about looking into a niche product area or doing something else that doesn't take on that huge behemoth heads on, because you're less likely to be successful because they can just wipe you out with money. So find people that are passionate about what you're bringing to the table and then find a way to reach them. The third one is promotion. How easy is it for you to reach the people that need what you're producing? That's usually a bit tough, but if you walk through the 4 P's of marketing, which is your product, your promotion, your place of distribution, and your pricing, it gives you an idea of how well you can be successful in terms of reaching the people that need your product. I really, really like this quote by Navin Jain. It says, success doesn't necessarily come from breakthrough innovation, but from flawless execution. A great strategy alone won't win a battle or a game. Now, everything we've been talking about so far is about developing a strategy for making it work, which is you understand who you are, you understand the market, and you're able to put a product together or whatever to be successful. But nothing works until you learn to execute. It's about executing. It's about executing successful businesses. So I have a friend that's extremely successful in business. Extremely successful. He's been a very young guy, but he started his business about 10 to 15 years ago. And today he has built one of the largest businesses in his industry in Africa. I'm not going to talk about the industry because once I do, it's a bit easy to put 2 and 2 together. Right. And so his businesses, to a large extent, are B2B businesses. So another business has a need. His business usually is the one that meets those needs. So those needs could be anything from needing a new software to needing a service to needing retail audits, whatever. His businesses have always been B2B, right? Now, because of the success of his B2B businesses, he has so much cash at his disposal that one day he decided to build a B2C business, which is a business to consumer. So you're reaching people directly. Now, they've been on this for about 5 years, trying to build this B2C business. Now, they have so much resources. They've pumped so much resources into that business. It's yet to be successful. Why? Because they have amazing skills at executing B2B, but they haven't built the skills and capacity to execute a direct-to-consumer product. So his B2B businesses, every single product line is successful. Everything he does in B2B is successful. But his B2C businesses have not been as successful, primarily because it's about execution. And when you learn to execute B2B, the skills you need to execute B2B is a bit different from what you need to execute B2C. So execution is about ideation. So there are many ideas that will come to you. And I like to say the ideas are cheap because everybody has one, right? So when somebody comes and says, oh, I would have been successful if somebody hadn't stolen my ideas, I just smile because no, that's not why you're not successful. Because when ideas float around in the world, I believe so many people get them at the same time. And it's the person that executes the best that wins. My face, my space, Friendstar, and a bunch of social media entities existed way before Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg came in, out-executed everybody, and today Facebook is the success that it is. Second one is development. How then do you, for ideation, how do you select the best of many ideas, right? So we've talked about ideas not being extremely important, but it's also important to be able to choose one of many rather than chasing several at the same time. How do you develop that idea? And then how do you build a monetization model that ensures that you can be successful across whatever it is that you're trying to do? Now, we've talked about the market, the self, and the execution. But in between them are certain intersections that I think are important to also explore before we move on from this teaching. Now, there's an intersection between market and self. That is what the market wants and who you are. If you understand both effectively, then you can build products that come out of you but respond to the needs of the market, right? If you understand the needs of the market and you can execute, you'll be able to build internal processes within your company or organizations to be successful. And then if you understand yourself and you can execute effectively, you'll be able to build profits into your business. So I'll spend some time to talk through each of these three intersections just to help us focus once again on what's truly important. The product. We talked already about the idea. What's the idea and why is it important? And what do you need to do about it? Then you sort of need to validate it. Now, this is extremely important. A friend of mine came across about 30 million naira a few years ago that he had saved from one of his businesses. I'll bet that's about plus or minus almost $100,000, right? So he decided that he was going to build a restaurant, a really big, a really nice restaurant that people could come to relax, would have a karaoke bar, would have a karaoke section, would have a band, would have a bunch of, really, really elaborate model. So he takes his money and pushes it into renting a really nice space, spent a lot of time renovating and making it nice, then opens the restaurant and nobody came. And within 6 months, the business had failed. Now I can use him as an example because he's a really good friend and I hope he doesn't mind. Now, why did the business fail? And I told him, I said that your business failed because you had the money to scale and be large and you went on and did it right away. But the way to run a business is to always start small. Take a small segment of your idea and build it into a product and see how people react to the product, then iterate, then build again. One of the things that's been happening at Overwood, for instance, is that we've been getting calls from all over Africa. Right now, we're still focused on Nigeria. But every week, we get about 20 people, plus or minus, that send an email or sends a message to say, would like to invest. I'm from Tanzania, I'm from Kenya, I'm from South Africa, would like to invest in Overwood. And I've always said, no, we'll come to you eventually. Because what we're trying to do is to use Nigeria as a test market to make sure that the model works, to make sure that we understand our customers, we understand how they think, we understand what's important to them, we're able to make profit for them, and we're able to even make profit as a business, helping them be profitable. If we do that well in 2020, 2021, we could then expand into another market and gradually build. So Nigeria is sort of our MVP, our minimum viable product. One other thing I should say was when we started Overwood, we were told to invest a lot of money into building an elaborate app, a website that does this, that jumps, that this does blah, 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 and all that stuff. We said, no, let's just build a basic product and see what people would think about it first. And then we would iterate and build. So right now we're in the process of iterating and building more elaborate products, but we started with something small. That way, if it fails, we can just take our ball, go home and cry, but without losing everything that we have in the world. And so whatever your business is, the goal of developing the product is to start with the idea, validate it, ask 3 or 4 of your friends, would you buy this from me? I'm thinking about starting this business, what do you think? Do a couple more research, find out from other people and see if the idea is even valid in the first place. Then build a small product. So for him, what I told him was he should have gone to a smaller place to start a restaurant, to make sure that he understands how the restaurant business works. Because running a restaurant business is not about making food, really. There's a whole value chain involved in that business model, from sourcing food to getting a chef, to managing people, to generating demand, to menu management. I mean, it's big. So basically, go and make sure you know how to do that first before building this humongous business model. So that's your minimum viable product, to your MVP. And then after building your MVP, you begin to refine and improve the product until it is something that people are willing to pay a lot of money for. Now, process is internal, is within your business. How do you select a team? Role assignments. What does each member of the business do? Job descriptions. What's the job of each person within the business? How do we manage a project to ensure that it's successful? And then how do we evaluate our people to make sure that they are successful? Let me give an example. When I build businesses, right, the first thing I do is I want to make sure that the people that work for me are happy at work, right? Before I became a corporate CEO, when I was still like a COO in another business, the CEO of that business told me that being a kind, considerate CEO doesn't work in Africa. That it's only in business schools and business books that they tell you have to be kind and considerate. That you need to be hard and firm, otherwise people will take you for granted. And I watched him, and he built a huge, humongous business, but everybody hated him, and everybody hated coming to work on Mondays. So when I had the opportunity to run another corporate firm that competed with him, right, I decided that I was going to build the exact opposite of what he had. I wanted my people to be happy. I wanted them to wake up on Monday morning and come to work excited. I wanted them to want to do the job rather than to be forced to do the job. And what he had told me was that model would never work. And this was also in Africa, by the way. And we managed to grow that business 300% in 3 years. That means 4 times. So from the profitability that I started with, in 3 years, we had quadrupled it. And the people were happy. And they loved coming to work. And they enjoyed working in the business. So since I resigned from that particular job and I've taken on other things, led other businesses, the one mantra of every business I work for is the people must be happy. So we go out of our way to build a conducive business environment. So that's a combination of myself, right? And the way and the market and the way we execute. That's me, right? And so in building processes for my business, or for my businesses, I build joy into the processes, right? I make sure that the people do the work, but they're happy doing it. Now, that's my own process. You have to decide what kind of organization you want to build and what are the things that are important to you that will impinge on the way the organization runs and what it does, right? Profit is the final part of it. Well, how do you price the products? That's a huge component of being profitable, because if you're not priced right, then you go under cost and then you're in trouble as a business. Now, this is really important. Price discrimination, which is the airline business does this very effectively. So if, for instance, for a while, it was someone did the research and showed that when you try to book an airline ticket on a Mac computer, it actually charges you a lot more than somebody that's booking on a Windows computer, because the assumption is that if you have a Mac, you probably can pay a little more for better services. Or if you're on a Mac, you get pushed a lot of extras. Oh, why don't you get this? Why don't you get that? Why don't you get that? Versus someone that's booking on Windows that just gets the basics. So basically the airline business says, oh, if you're booking a day before your trip, well, you really don't have a choice. So we're going to charge you twice the price of the person that booked a month in advance, right? So for many other business, you sort of have to price discriminate. When you're dealing with an SME, a small, medium enterprise, well, then to a large extent, you don't want to gouge on the prices. When you're dealing with a huge conglomerate, maybe you can have a bit more of a leeway to charge a little bit more. Now, let me say one more thing. This is probably the most important thing for businesses in Africa, because, well, maybe big businesses, because it seems like there's such a huge focus on revenue and cost is not a huge conglomerate. So I come from the cost containment school of business, which is, well, in Africa, but also in tech. A lot of tech businesses don't think about the cost, right? Which is that you can be profitable from day one. So for instance, Overwood is already breaking even 5-6 months into running this business, because we're very conscious about not taking on costs that we won't be able to afford, right? Because when I ran the very first business that I ran, I told you a bit about that business earlier. We were not able to get new clients for the first 8 months or so of my being there as a CEO of the business. But the business grew by about 30% with the same clients that the previous guy left behind. How did we do that? I looked at the areas of waste in the business and began to cut them down so that, well, profit is revenue minus cost. So revenue wasn't growing significantly, but our cost was dropping. Now, I don't cut cost on the back of people. I cut costs with processes and operations management, because operations management is usually your highest cost. So if you find a way to put a good procurement process in place, you put a good execution process in place, you do this on day 1, day 2, you do this, day 3, we do this, day 4, we do this, and if we do those 4 things effectively, we would be able to run at a more efficient whatever. So efficiency is a huge part of business management. And then the final one, I put revenue last because that's what a lot of people put first. I think cost is more important in many ways, especially for large corporates, than revenue. Then how do we make money and keep enough of it so that we can be profitable as a business? How do we ensure that we're bringing multiple products to the market? How do we ensure that our products meet the needs of the people in everything we do? So let me take it back. The 3 key drivers of entrepreneurial success again are yourself, the market, and how well you execute. Yourself is about what's important to you, who you are. The market is what's important to the market. What do they want rather than what do you want? And then the final part of it is how well can you execute the ideas you have to ensure that you're successful. Well, that's about it. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.